Ever get that feeling like something's just not right? You know, that unsettling feeling, like when you can't quite put your finger on it, but something's off.
Mm.
That feeling, that's kind of at the heart of what we're looking at today.
Mm-hmm.
The disappearance of Nicole Silvers, or Nikki as she was known.
Yeah.
So picture this, right? Your teenage daughter, she's living with a friend's family. Maybe things are a little rocky at home.
Right.
And then one night, she's just gone. Vanished. Poof.
It's a parent's worst nightmare.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No trace. And that's the mystery that we're going to try to unpack today.
What makes Nikki's case so compelling, though, is that it doesn't really fit the mold of a typical runaway. The details are just strange.
Yeah.
Police reports, interviews, they paint this picture of a normal life just suddenly cut short, and the deeper you dig, the more confusing it gets.
So how are we going to tackle this one? Where are we going to start?
Well, we're going to pull from a variety of sources for this one. Police reports are a big one, of course. But we've also got some interviews with people who were close to Nikki. And even some insights from a true crime podcast that covered the case a while back.
Ooh, I love a good podcast, deep dive.
Yeah.
So much good stuff out there. But okay, enough about us. We want to know what you think happened. What are your theories? So as we go through this, keep an ear out for those little details, the ones that might just hold the key to solving this thing. What do you say we jump in?
Let's do it. Let's start by getting a picture of Nikki's life before she disappeared. It's 2014, Nikki's 16, a bright kid, musically gifted, played guitar.
I read that somewhere, yeah.
But like most teenagers, she's going through some stuff, typical teenage struggles, some tension with her parents, especially her dad.
Right. I think that's pretty common, isn't it? Especially
Right.
at that age.
Oh, absolutely. It's a tough time for everyone involved, but it's actually one of the reasons why Nikki was living with her friend Dana and Dana's mom, Allison, in Longmont, Colorado at the time.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, just a temporary arrangement to give everyone a little space.
But from what I understand, Nikki wasn't like a troubled kid, right? She wasn't just waiting for an excuse to run away.
Not at all. I mean, she had her moments, sure, but who doesn't at that age?
Right.
She had a part-time job, good grades, friends.
So not your typical runaway case.
Nope. And this is where things start to get really weird. It's Dana who first notices that something's wrong. She walks into Nikki's room one day, and it's almost empty.
Empty? Like, what do you mean empty?
Most of her clothes are gone. Her guitar, which she loved, it's missing. But the case is still there. And get this, her phone charger is left behind too.
Hold on, her phone charger. Really?
Yeah.
What teenager leaves their phone charger behind?
Exactly. It's like a part of their body these days. They'd sooner leave a kidney behind.
Right. It's those little things that just don't add up. Like, that's a big red flag right there.
Definitely. And at first, Dana and Allison, they just figure that Nikki went back to her parents. Seems logical, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thought, right?
Makes sense. But when they call Nikki's parents, she's not there.
Oh. So now it's getting a little more serious.
Yeah, now they're starting to worry.
So when do things really take a turn? When does it become more than just like, oh, she's probably at a friend's house?
Well, Nikki misses work.
Okay, she's a teenager, it happens.
Yeah, but it wasn't just any day. It was payday. And then her phone goes straight to voicemail. No answer, no callbacks.
Okay, so that's pretty unusual. I mean, I get teenagers can be flaky, but payday and no answer at all, that's not good.
Not good at all. This is when the worry turns into serious concern and a missing person report is officially filed.
Okay, so now the police are involved?
Yeah.
What do they make of all this? Do they think she's just a runaway?
Well, they have to consider it, of course. Nikki had run away from her parents' house before moving in with Dana and Allison.
Right.
But like we talked about, the missing paycheck, the things left behind, that doesn't really fit the typical runaway, does it?
Not really, no.
Hmm.
So what else are they looking at?
Well, abduction is definitely on the table, especially with the last known sighting of Nikki.
Last sighting.
Yeah. She was seen in a car, described as an older model, kind of boxy Oldsmobile, around 2 a.m. the night she disappeared.
Okay, so that's suspicious. But then again, didn't we say she packed most of her stuff?
Exactly. That doesn't really scream abduction either.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like trying to put together a puzzle when you're using half the pieces.
That's a great way to put it. So the police start interviewing people in Nikki's life to try and fill in those missing pieces.
Makes sense. Who did they talk to?
They start with Dana and Allison, obviously.
Right, I mean, they were the last to see her.
Yeah, and they're the ones who gave the description of that Oldsmobile. Then there's Jesse. He's Nikki's coworker. Drove her home from work on the 8th. But his car wasn't an Oldsmobile. Then they talked to her cousin, Michelle.
Michelle.
Yeah. They had lunch plans the day after Nikki disappeared, the 9th, but Nikki never showed. Michelle told the police she texted Nikki around noon that day, but got no response.
So we're starting to get a timeline here.
We are.
Last contact seems to be that text from Michelle, 12:27 p.m. on the 9th. And then radio silence.
Pretty much, yeah. And the police followed up on every possible lead after that. Every little rumor, every whisper of a sighting. Someone thought they saw her at a homeless encampment. Another person thought they saw her at a fast food drive-thru. You name it, they checked it out.
Yeah.
Dead ends. Every single one.
Wow. So we've got a 16-year-old girl who basically vanished into thin air. If she didn't run away and there's no obvious sign of an abduction, what were the police left with? What clues did they have to go on?
Well, a few things did stand out. Phone records, for one.
Phone records.
Yeah, they confirmed that last text from Michelle. After 12:27 p.m. on the 9th, there's zero activity on Nikki's phone. Then there's her bank account.
Bank account. Okay.
She had a few $100 in there, but no withdrawals after she disappeared.
That's huge, isn't it? If she ran away, wouldn't she have taken some cash with her?
You'd think so, right? Doesn't
Yeah.
really support the runaway theory.
No, not at all. Anything else?
Oh, yeah. And then there's this interesting tidbit from one of Nikki's teachers.
What's that?
The teacher mentioned she had signed Nikki up for a clothing donation program a few weeks before she disappeared.
A clothing donation program. Why?
Well, it suggested there might have been some financial difficulties.
Interesting.
Even though her family was considered middle class.
So maybe things weren't as good as they seemed. Maybe there
Oh.
was some pressure there.
Could be. But then again, she left practically all her belongings behind and didn't touch her money.
Okay, that doesn't add up.
It really doesn't.
So where do we go from here?
Well, there's one more thing that's really strange.
What's that?
Nikki's father, Kevin, he was never actually interviewed by the police back in 2014.
Wow. That is strange.
Yeah.
You'd think he'd be one of the first people they'd want to talk to, wouldn't you? Especially with this strained relationship.
You'd think so, yeah. But for whatever reason, it never happened. But the story doesn't end there. The investigation actually takes a pretty dramatic turn in 2019. A new detective, Detective Castellan, takes over Nikki's case and starts digging through all the details. And he makes a huge breakthrough. Remember that mysterious Oldsmobile we were talking about?
The one Dana and Allison saw Nikki in?
Yeah, that one. Well, he finally tracks down the owner.
After all these years. Wow. So who was it?
You're not going to believe this. It was Nikki's sister, Jessica.
Jessica. No way. But wait, wasn't she, like, struggling with a heroin addiction back then? What was she doing with Nikki the night she disappeared?
That's exactly what Detective Castellan wanted to know.
Yeah.
By the time he figured out the car belonged to Jessica, it was already 2020.
Wow, so 5 years later.
Yeah. But he finally tracks her down and brings her in for an interview. And thankfully, at this point, Jessica was sober and ready to talk.
Okay, so after years of dead ends and questions, Jessica might have a piece of the puzzle. What did she tell the police?
Well, she confirmed that she was with Nikki the night she disappeared. They were just hanging out in the driveway of Dana and Allison's house, talking.
Hold on. Hanging out,
Yeah.
talking. I thought they were estranged. Wasn't that, like, the whole reason Nikki was living with Dana's family? To get away from the tension at home, including Jessica.
It does seem strange, right?
Yeah.
And Detective Castellan definitely picked up on that. But according to Jessica, it was like a rare moment of clarity for her. She wanted to reconnect with her little sister.
Okay. But that still doesn't explain what happened to Nikki. Did Jessica see her leave with someone? Did something happen? What did she say?
Jessica said they just sat in the car talking for hours. It was around 3 in the morning when Nikki finally went back inside the house and Jessica left.
Wait, so if Jessica's telling the truth, this means that Nikki went back into the house with Dana and Allison presumably asleep inside. But they never mentioned hearing anything unusual that night.
You're right.
This just makes things even weirder.
It really does. It raises way more questions than it answers. If Nikki went back inside, why'd she leave again? And how? Did something happen in the house that Dana and Allison just weren't aware of?
It's like, how do you not notice something like that? It's just bizarre. But, okay, before we get too off track, so let's go back to Jessica for a second. She was also able to clear up why Nikki's car ended up abandoned at that drug house, right?
Yeah, she admitted to borrowing Nikki's car a few weeks before she disappeared, in late March or early April 2014. Said the car broke down and she just left it there.
Okay, so at least that part of the story makes sense. But it still doesn't tell us what happened to Nikki. I gotta ask, though, why did it take Jessica 6 years to come forward with this information? That's a long time to stay silent.
It's a good question. Jessica blamed it on her addiction. She said she was in a really bad place back then, battling her own demons. She just wasn't in any shape to help the investigation. It wasn't until she got clean in 2019 that she felt like she could finally share what she knew.
I mean, it's understandable, but it's also super frustrating for everyone involved, especially for Nikki's family and friends who've been searching for answers all these years. So, did Detective Castellan re-interview anyone after talking to Jessica? Did anyone change their story?
He did, yeah. Went back and talked to everyone who was involved in the original investigation.
Wow, everyone.
Pretty much. Nikki's parents, her ex-boyfriend, friends, coworkers, everyone. He wanted to be absolutely sure he hadn't missed anything, that no one's memory had, changed over time.
Makes sense. And
Yeah.
did anything change?
No, everyone's stories remain the same. But getting Jessica's testimony was huge.
No.
It gave Detective Castellan a much clearer picture of what happened in those final hours leading up to Nikki's disappearance. But even with this new information, there's still this giant hole in the story. What happened after 3 a.m.?
Right, it's like we took one step forward and then two steps back. It's just so frustrating.
It is. So where does Detective Castellan go from there? He's incredibly thorough, doesn't rule anything out, doesn't think Nikki was suicidal, and based on the evidence, he's not convinced she ran away either. He even brought in dive teams to search a lake near Dana and Allison's house, just to be completely sure.
Wow.
But so far, nothing.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It sounds like he really believes something awful happened to Nikki.
He does. He's working under the assumption that Nikki left willingly with someone she trusted and that something went terribly wrong. But he hasn't given up hope. He's still checking pawn shop databases for any sign of her guitar.
Oh, wow.
And he regularly compares her DNA to unidentified remains all over the country. But as of today, Nikki Silvers is still missing.
This is such a scary reminder that even in normal everyday lives, there can be these hidden things going on, these dark secrets.
It really is.
We've laid out the facts as we know them, but what does it all mean? We'll try to untangle that and share our final thoughts right after this break.
It's just wild, right? Like how a person can just vanish. Just like that, especially from inside a house. Like there were other people there.
I know, it's so strange. And what makes it even more unsettling is we have this very detailed timeline. Up until 3 a.m. on April 9th, we know where Nikki was, who she talked to, what she did, and then, boom, nothing.
It's like a record scratch. Everything just stops. And you're left with this mountain of questions. Like, why did it take so long to figure out that Oldsmobile was Jessica's? Why wasn't she interviewed right away?
Yeah, it's frustrating. Was there some kind of miscommunication between the police departments? You have to wonder if that delay had an impact on the case.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole question of Nikki's, inner world. The teacher's comment about the clothing donations, her leaving stuff behind, the connection to the drug house through Jessica. What does it all mean? Was there something going on with Nikki that no one knew about? Right. Was there more to her story than anyone realized?
Maybe a side of her that she kept hidden, even from her closest friends. Which brings us back to that big question. What happened to her after 3 a.m. on April 9th? Did she sneak out again? Did something happen in the house that Dana and Allison didn't hear? Did someone come back for her?
It's a mystery with so many possible answers.
Yeah.
Was it foul play? Did she get mixed up with the wrong people? Or did she just, make a choice that led her to disappear?
We might never know for sure. But we can keep her story alive. Keep asking those questions. Keep looking for answers. Hope that maybe someday someone will come forward with that one missing piece.
I think that's the point of these deep dives, isn't it? We take what we have, try to connect the dots, try to make sense of it all. But sometimes I guess the biggest takeaway is that some mysteries just aren't meant to be solved.
Yeah, I guess so. Doesn't mean we stop trying to find the truth, though, right? It just means we have to be realistic about it. And remember that there are real people involved with real feelings. Nikki's case, it really highlights that even in seemingly ordinary lives, there can be these huge secrets and unresolved issues. It's a story that sticks with you. What are your thoughts on this one? What details stood out to you? Head over to our website and let us know your theories. We've also got some photos from the investigation you can check out. And if you're into these deep dives, make sure you subscribe to the show. We explore a new mystery every week, uncovering those hidden truths, challenging those perspectives. Thanks for joining us as we explore the strange world of Nikki Silvers.